Welcome to the 13th episode of Conversations with a Martial Artist, and today is my first crack at a Zoom interview as well. I have a super talented guest today. He's got a load of experience in a real variety of martial arts, lots of different talents in there. Primarily, he is known for his Wing Chun. His name is Sifu Alan Orr. He's an 8th degree Chusao lay practitioner in the Wing Chun style. And he has led a really successful history of combat sports with his team. He's also got a multitude of other qualifications, some of which I'm sure I will probably miss out. The list is quite extensive, but he's a 1st degree Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt, 5th degree Eskrima black belt, a Yang Tai Ji practitioner, loads and loads of martial arts experience over a couple of decades, had a lot of success and really useful insights. He's also a published author and formerly was an editor for a variety of martial arts magazines. So lots and lots of different insights. I hope it is enjoyable for you. Please do go and check out some of his work. You can follow him online. I've put all of the links in the description so you can find his social medias and his online platforms if you want to go and learn from him. But please do sit back and enjoy. I do appreciate it is a slightly longer episode than normal. However, I really do think it's useful. So settle in, break it down into a couple of goes and have a listen to what Sifu Alan's got to say. Thanks very much. Enjoy. Sifu Alan, thank you very much once again for doing this. I appreciate you taking the time and your evening, I guess. We're the morning. Obviously, you're in New Zealand, so I appreciate you making this work.
No, anytime. You're very welcome, Tom. It's a pleasure to speak to you.
Always. So, yeah, I thought for people that don't know you, it would be a good idea to just kind of briefly run through, as briefly as you can, I guess, like we were saying a second camera. There's quite a lot that goes into it and your training and your background. But, yeah, would you mind a bit through kind of your history and your different arts and things?
Well, history might take a long time because I'm getting old. I'll just do it really briefly. I don't bore anybody to death. I suppose my passions was being Wing Chun. So I spent the last 25 years learning Wing Chun, trained with various teachers and various systems of Wing Chun, and then met my teacher, Robert Chu, who I've been with for over 25 years. Which I've dedicated myself to, and that's always been my driving art is Wing Chun. I always knew that in my mind it was something that I was drawn to and could see how it could work. But until I met Robert Chu, I really didn't really fulfill that until I met him, and that really changed my whole martial art journey, really. And over that period of time, before that, when I was learning Wing Chun, I was doing JKD, I was doing Filipino martial arts, I was learning grappling styles. So that's all been going on probably for 10 years previous to that as well. And then I was probably in the last, how long ago it is now? Probably in the last 20 plus years, I got into jiu-jitsu after getting to wrestling. So I was actually doing catch wrestling before anybody really heard about it. I'd gone to America. I had Matt Fury come to me. I'd gone to see Tony Cicchini. I'd been training with the guys over here that did some catch wrestling. So I met a lot of catch wrestlers, and I've been doing that 25 years ago before anybody else did it. I just thought it really married well for street self-defense, which is what I was really interested in, because it wasn't based on a gi, and I kind of liked the vintage style as well, like the old school style. So I did a lot of wrestling back then, and then I got into jiu-jitsu when I met my jiu-jitsu teacher, Leo Nagar. I'd done jiu-jitsu before that for quite a while. I trained with Eddie Minnis at Shark Tank, which I'll talk about. But when I met Leo, that's when I got into jiu-jitsu properly as such, and trained in the gi, and I got my black belt with him. I trained a lot of MMA style jiu-jitsu with Eddie Minnis from Shark Tank in LA. Went out to LA a number of times, and he came to UK a lot, and we formed a bond, which we still have now. I mean, I'm going there in 2 weeks' time to train with him again, so we've been friends ever since. We can talk about that. But so Wing Chun, Jiu-Jitsu. In between all that, I trained Eskrima. I got to about, I think, brown belt with a style called Rapid Eyes, which is quite well known in the UK, with Jude Tucker and Pat O'Malley, very good teachers. And they had a very eclectic style that they put into their own system, which was really good for me at the time, because I learned a lot about different styles of Eskrima. So it's kind of like a masterclass in how Eskrima really works all over. And then I met Mark Wiley. Mark Wiley was a friend of my teacher. So when he was coming to the UK, my teacher asked me to meet him and look after him. So I did. And we just got on very, very well. And I became his student. 20 years later, I'm a fifth degree black belt with Mark Wiley in integrated Eskrima, which is based upon Carlisa Vistrissimo system. So all these things kind of happen kind of organically. So it sounds like I've done a lot, but I've been doing martial arts a long time. It's been something I've always been interested in. And in between, I've done other stuff. I've trained my training partner, Vic Hoti. He's my best friends and training partners. We do a lot of sambo training together. We do a lot of wrestling together, jiu-jitsu together, kung fu together. So lots of different things. I've also trained in Tai Chi, Yang style mostly, different styles of Yang. And I'm progressing that a lot more now, become more fascinated with that. So that's become a big fascination. Quite lucky to train with Jim Lugho in London, and learn the Yang style that he teaches. It's the family style that he learned. So yes, there's a lot of different things, lots of Qigong training, lots of conditioning training. The list goes on and on. But my main teachers really that I look at, that I train all the time with, is obviously Robert Chu, my kung fu teacher, Leo Lagar, my jiu-jitsu teacher, Mark Wiley, my Eskrima teacher, and Jim, I train a lot of Tai Chi with. So there's a lot of people that I train with regularly. So it's quite funny, because we'll talk about it later, but some people in Wing Chun circles think I'm quite close-minded because I have quite strong opinions about what I think's right or wrong in terms of training and different things, which we can talk about. But it's quite funny when them people have only ever trained one style and that's it. I've done a lot of stuff, and not just eclectically trained things. I've done them to obviously reasonably high levels. So
absolutely,
yeah. So that's a kind of a abridged version of the whole whole shebang.
That is flying through. But it is interesting to see just how much you have done over that time. And obviously, when you meet you and train with you, whatever style it is, you can tell you have that like deep rooted fascination and like that broad understanding from, I think, all of those different martial arts, because they all have different pieces to bring to the table, I imagine.
Yeah. I always tried to be a student. I like being a student. So again, going back to people's criticism, sometimes it makes me laugh because I'm always a student. I'm always learning something. There's always something I'm learning. I'm always studying things. I'm always learning, but people don't ask you about what you're doing or not interested. So you don't talk about it. You just do what you're doing. But I prefer being a student than a teacher. That's what I'm really interested in. I prefer just to sit at the back and listen and do as I'm told. That's kind of what I like to do. I always tell my students I don't like teaching them, because I'd rather just be training. But you teach people because they need to be taught and they need your help, and you want to help people. And that's obviously, in terms of good karma, it's important to pass on what you have and help people. So I do it. But to me, it's not as enjoyable as just doing your own training. Doing your own training and being taught by someone and just shut up and do it. That's even better, because you don't have to do anything. You should just do as you're told. That's the most relaxing time I think you can have. If someone's shouting at you, pushing you, telling you what to do, I'm totally relaxed with that. That's my happy place, because all I've got to do is just shut up and do it.
Fair enough. And I mean, you have had some incredible teachers, and I think it goes to show kind of when you're listing all the people that you train with and under, they're kind of scattered all over the world, which is, one, I imagine quite inconvenient for you, but two, it goes to show you've really sought out, like, all those names you're listing are some of the best guys in their fields in the world.
Yeah, I think I was very lucky, because I never limited my mindset to I can't do this, I can't go there, I can't train with this person. I always just thought that's the person I'm going to train with. That's what I'm going to make happen. I'm going to go and do it. When I was to get good at martial arts, you have to be kind of mentally focused on getting good. You have to be focused on what you want to get out of it. So, to me, I put a lot of energy into it. So I want to make sure I don't waste my time.
Yeah.
So if I see something that's really good, then I want to go to that straight away. I don't want to think one day I might get a chance to do that or see that, or I'll just go down the road to the local village hall and see what they're doing there. I go exactly to where I want to go. So I was going to America 30 years ago before anybody ever thought about doing trips like that. I was going to America and train at Shark Tank, go and train with my teacher, Robert Chu. I was going and doing stuff like years and years ago. before anybody thought of doing that. Now that's become maybe more of a normal thing to do, to go out and train with what you want to train with. But I was just doing it because that's what I want to do. That was just what it was.
Yeah, and I suppose especially that when you first started training, it was a bit of a different culture to it as well. People were a lot more secretive and things. Now,
well, yeah. Sorry, we didn't have the internet, so you couldn't check things. People could lie all the time. They could tell you whatever they want to tell you. And now we know lots of things that were told and said weren't true, or were twisted, or were half truths, or maybe not what we thought they were. Because now we can cross-check them and check, But before you couldn't do that, I mean, literally, we're talking across the world, having a chat is easy, but you couldn't do that before. So you have to go there and see it. I mean, but I still remember when I didn't have a mobile phone, I had to go to a telephone box. So people think, what are you talking about? But you'd actually go to meet someone and you couldn't find them. They were around the corner and you couldn't find them. You'd go to a telephone box and phone who? Because if they're looking for you, they're not going to be at home. So you could actually just meet in a city to meet up with somebody maybe 2 streets away and not find each other, which nowadays just seems ridiculous because you just text, say, well, you're in the corner. It's easy. But yeah, so it was a different world. It was a different world. We had to, get videos and to watch things, and you had to, read books, which, people nowadays just go online and just search things and check things. And yeah, it's much better in that sense because we have much more access to high quality material. Like if you do jiu-jitsu, you can go on and watch Gordon Ryan's new instructional that comes out and learn some really cool techniques that you would never have had access to before. So you can look at people who are developing new stuff all the time, and you can actually have access to it. You can find out what they're doing. So Kung Fu is a little bit different. It's still a little bit secretive in areas. There's still traditional of that. Maybe it's the cultural thing, and maybe because there's less people that are interested in learning that level of skill, that people don't want to just give it away for no reason. They want to get the right people. So in Kung Fu circles, it's still a little bit more closed door. But in other arts, it's really freely open. It's just really how much can you take? What can you absorb? So yeah, big changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's quite interesting what you say about the Kung Fu stuff there, because obviously you're probably most well known for your Wing Chun. And as you say, your Wing Chun is slightly different to most others, but more so in the training methods than anything. Obviously, there are some very interesting differences in your lineage from Robert Chu and things like that. Would you talk a little bit more on that? Because you're kind of the only Kung Fu school that goes really into the MMA focus, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, I think actually there's other schools of Wing Chun that have got involved in combat sports. And even before us, I would say there was. I know in Germany they were quite heavily involved in stuff. But we've probably been, I would say, maybe most consistent and successful in terms of the complete crossover. And some people try to mirror that a little bit since, but not really done what we did. Over the last 25 years, we've had fighters at all levels, all competitions, all styles of fighting, using proper Wing Chun. Because a lot of people say they're doing Wing Chun inside their MMA, but what they're doing is just using a few Wing Chun concepts, which is not the same. My fighters, we just trained Wing Chun. That's all we did. And the way it started was back in the day. There was an amateur scene which was quite. It was sort of not to say underground. It wasn't like mysterious. It just wasn't very mainstream. Like jiu-jitsu now is kind of mainstream, but back then they used to have amateur tournaments where you could strike full contact to the body, to the legs, just below the neck. You could strike full power and grapple, right? So it was kind of like strike and grapple competitions, and that was the amateur sort of scene. And my guys doing Wing Chun with me, the way we trained our Wing Chun, which we can talk about, I always trained it like a boxer would train. Like you train it, you have to be fit and healthy and be dynamic. And I always thought Wing Chun is for health and defense, right? You have to have fighting skills, but you have to be healthy. So we trained robustly. So we trained in a way that was, trained like fighters. So the guys, also the system itself really is built for that, because the system is built upon body structure and how the body works. So everything biomechanically works very dynamically. And then we have this concept of linking, delinking the joints and how we use the body. So we have a very good focus on balance control and timing. So a lot of Wing Chun is very much based on position and their structure, they call it now, would be the position they're in. Now, with me, my teacher, coined the term body structure, which was really from Hawkins, from Grandmaster Hawkins Chung. He took it one step further and then analyzed it and really built a system around that. And for us, the body structure is a dynamic thing. It's not static, and it's not one-dimensional. So the body structure includes, how you use the bones of your body, the joints of your body, how you use your timing, how you use your linking and delinking skills to become soft or to become hard, and how you borrow pressure, how you redirect pressure. So there was a whole layers of inside body structure. So one word describes a whole mixing pot of ideas, which are very, very structured in terms of how we teach it. So when we were learning to do our Wing Chun that way, my guys felt that it was very functional, and they felt like, yeah, this really works. And they were a bunch of young guys at the time. I was younger. Everybody was a bit more eager to fight. And I grew up with a lot of violence, and for me, fighting wasn't really a big deal because I'd already experienced fighting, street fighting, domestic problems, and I wasn't really worried about violence. I knew what it meant. I knew how it worked. I understood the pros and cons of violence. But a lot of my guys were guys that had never had a fight, or some. I had a few rough guys who had a lot of fights, but there was a lot of guys who also didn't have a fight. So this mixed bag of guys, which you get with martial arts, you get lawyers, builders, you get a mixture of people that from all walks of life, but they all come together, and they all have different things they bring to the table in terms of mentality or physicality. So the guys sort of expressed an interest to compete in the sport, like in these sort of strike and grapple events and stuff. And I've been doing catch wrestling. So I said to him, well, we know how to wrestle in terms of like how to control somebody and how to in catch wrestling, there is submissions, obviously. So we understood some basic submissions. We wasn't as sophisticated on our back as jiu-jitsu was, but our mentality was we wouldn't be on our back very much because we're just going to smash everybody because we had the striking skill. We knew we could dominate the clinch and we could dominate striking positions. Most people, especially then, didn't have sophisticated striking. It wasn't like high-level kickboxers were doing grappling and mixing it. They weren't. So now you have high-level kickboxers doing grappling. It's a bit different as well because they obviously have good skills. But back then, it was mostly grapplers with a bit of striking, and the striking wasn't very sophisticated. We had a sophisticated striking system, which really worked well in the clinch and was a lot more layered. We were very confident we could control that environment and make it hard for people to take us down. And if they did want to take us down, we could wrestle. So we could wrestle that situation, and we knew fundamental submissions. So we entered the tournaments, and we smashed everybody. One of my guys won his division first year. My other guy got to the final, beat everybody. Lost in the final last 10 seconds to an armbar because he thought the fight was finished, and he kind of just relaxed. And the guy spun an armbar really quick because he just reversed the last position after my guy dominated the 3 rounds. So there's a lesson learned there. But in looking back at it, we had, I think, 5 or 6 guys fighting, and we did really, really well. Not really knowing, I say not knowing what we're doing. We just turned up and put the shorts on and got on there and did it, right? So it wasn't really sophisticated. But, when we hit people, we dropped them, and in them type of environments, that wasn't happening. People weren't really doing much with their striking. They were hitting people, nothing was happening. So that was a start point. And then the guys, after about 2 years of doing a lot of amateur shows, there was people asking us to fight on local shows that were doing semi-professional fights, and that was with head striking, and the guys wanted to try that. So at that point, I said to my guys, I'm not really comfortable coaching you for that type of level of sport with what I understand at the moment in terms of sport, because I'd come from a street self-defense background. I didn't have a sport background myself. I did a couple of sport fights just to show the guys, how to relax and how to deal with it. But it wasn't really what I was. I wasn't like a kickboxer for 10 years or a jiu-jitsu guy doing jiu-jitsu tournaments 10 years at this point, because this just wasn't around for me. So I wasn't really comfortable morally to sort of say, yeah, I know how to coach you or corner you for these type of events, because there were so many things I was just winging it, not winging it like doing something I shouldn't be doing. We were doing it together as a team, and we weren't really interested in winning. We were interested in just doing it and seeing what happened. We didn't. The good thing about that period, especially, was the guys weren't interested in being champions or winning. It was more interesting, like, let's just see what happens, let's see what we learn, let's see what works, let's see what doesn't work. So it was a real kind of we had this wolf pack mentality. It was like we'll just go out and hunt and see what happens and come back with something, and we'll learn something. So it was a really good time because we wasn't really stressed about it. But then I said to him, if you want to go to do something professional, people can start getting hurt or it gets a little bit more serious. So at that point, I'd watched a documentary called Life in the Cage about the Shark Tank in America, and they were a sort of sister gym of the Lions Den with Ken Shamrock. And in the documentary, you see Eddie Millis goes to Lions Den with his guys. They train with Ken's guys, and Eddie was teaching. And when I was watching him teach, he's ex-military, so it was quite strict, but really focused. But I could see he had a lot of heart and passion, and I could see that he really wanted his guys to do well, and he knew what he was talking about. He was super focused on how they're going to do it, what's going to happen. And he was taking guys to fight in Tijuana, to Hawaii, to all around America. They were one of the most active fight gyms in the world at the time because there wasn't fight gyms in the world at the time. So Shark Tank and Lions Den were really the cutting edge. So when I watched that, I thought I feel a bit terrified watching it. Like this is real intense. So I actually got a martial art book out. Like it was just a book about MMA, a very early book. And in the back of the book, it had addresses of schools in America. And I flicked through it and I found the address for Shark Tank. I thought, wow, because it wasn't, you couldn't search on the internet to find these things. It was just, you had to get a book. And the number was there, and I just rang the number. So it was like midnight in the UK, and I ring the number. Eddie answered the phone, and I said, oh, I'm looking for Eddie Millis from Shark Tank. He said, yes, it's Eddie Millis. And we start talking, and we just got on really, really well. Within 2 weeks, he was in England, training my guys in my garage, my friend's garage, and we were training with him. And then we went out to Shark Tank multiple times, trained with his guys out there, which is fun stories.
Yeah,
trial by fires, because we went through the proper Shark Tank training. But that was the start of a relationship with Eddie. And the reason I did that is because he was so experienced. He had guys fighting K1, UFC, Japan. He had fights in Japan for 2 years. He was a rep for K1. So he had so much experience, and had a lot of high-level fighters that he trained, and he trained with high-level fighters. And to me, that was going to give me experience. And it did. It gave me a lot of experience with how to corner people, how to train for fights. Eddie's mentality really helped because me and him are very similar in a lot of ways. So it kind of made you more comfortable about how you were, like how you teach and what your style was. You kind of felt more comfortable seeing someone who has a similar approach and a similar sense of humor about it, dark sense of humor. I thought maybe that was just me, but there's a lot of people in our situation of training. You have to have that kind of sense of humor where you don't take yourself too seriously, but you take it seriously because people need to train hard. There's a lot of different things came out of that, and we became lifelong friends. So, Eddie's always got my back, and I've always got his back. So, he's a super guy, and I learned so much from him. Still do, that's why I'm going back in 2 weeks. I'm going back in 2 weeks to see my teacher, Robert Chu, and to see Eddie. I've got, train both of them. So, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I was lucky enough to meet you in your Thailand camp last year, and Eddie was there as well. And he was again.
Yeah. So you've met Eddie, right? You've met, he's seen the energy, right? He's a character, he's just got a high energy. Mostly people that have high energy, for me, sometimes you get these extroverted people, they're a bit flaky and not so much substance. But Eddie's he's not over extroverted, but he's kind of like really, he lights up a room and gets to know everybody and motivates the group. But he's got a lot of heart, the passion's there, the heart's there. He cares. And when he's been hard on you, it's because he really cares. He really wants you to get somewhere. So he's got a perfect balance for me of having that kind of energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's super skilled himself. He was one of the first American black belts for jiu-jitsu as well, I think, wasn't he? I think he was saying.
Yeah. He trained with Alan Goes and Joe Moreira, and he trained with Eric Paulson. So Eric Paulson's very good friend. Bass Rutten is a very good friend of Eddie's. Obviously, Ken Shamrock. So he was there at the cutting edge time of MMA's birth, really, in America. Training with all the top guys in the world. A lot of his fighters were top notch, and he's been there, done it, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great guy to be able to be friends with and learn from, which obviously has a huge impact.
I brought one of my fighters, Pete Irwin, over to America to fight Eddie's show, Invincible. This is many years ago, 15 years ago, and Eddie had Bruce Buffer as doing the MC, and it was because Bruce is Eddie's friend. So he just called him up and said, "Oh, can you come do my show?" And Bruce like, "Yeah, sure." Wow. So this is like everybody knows Eddie. Eddie knows everybody. It's just he's that kind of guy, that people would do anything for him, because I know that he's that kind of guy that would do anything for you. He's that kind of guy. He's reliable, got your back, and his word is solid. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was an amazing experience at that time. That's back in the day when we still used to wear tap out shorts, when tap out was cool. And the guys from tap out were from California, from Rancho, where Eddie's from. Eddie actually helped them get started. He knew all the tap out guys, so he went there, and tap out guys are there. Bruce Buffer's there. It's like we're at an MMA show in LA. There's hot rods outside, and it's like it's just living the dream,
Wow, yeah, I didn't realize you're right. Everyone does know Eddie.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow, that is fantastic. And then so obviously that's one of your influences and one of your teachers. One of them that I am also quite interested in, I think a lot of people will be interested in hearing a bit about, is obviously your Sifu, Robert Chu, because he has a very interesting background in terms of how his lineage kind of came together, which I didn't know much about. I've read a lot of his articles and things that he writes. I know he writes for Wing Chun Illustrated quite regularly and things like that. And he's got but when I was reading your book, you had a chapter dedicated to him, and kind of his and come together, and that's really interesting as well, because it's not your standard like Yip Man lineage, is it?
Well, it is. Yeah, it is a Yip Man lineage. He trained with Mo Yat system in New York for quite a long time, and while he was doing that, he met William Chung, trained with William Chung. He went to Hong Kong, trained with Choi Sin Ting, with Wan Shanlong, Ho Man, trained with everybody. So at that time, he'd gone around and checked out all the Yip Man lineages. And people don't realize my teacher's the type of person, if he says to you, can I see your forms? When you show him the forms, he remembers the forms. He's got a very good eye and a good memory. He can show you 6 examples of sim. Just ask people to see their forms, see how they do their dummy, their pole and eyes, and see how they do chi sao. And then basically from there, he came back, and then I think it was Hawkins had done a seminar in New York, and he trained with Hawkins. It was so super impressed with Hawkins. He decided to really relocate to California, right? Because Hawkins is in California. So he uprooted to California. And before that, he had also trained with other styles. Like, people don't realize he's trained in Xing Yi, Bagua, Tai Chi. He's an inheritor of the Dragon Tiger Gate spear system from his teacher that was in New York. So he's trained a lot of different styles, a lot of different systems, and a lot of Qigong. So when he trained with Hawkins really was a person that made him think more about the overall structure of the system, because Hawkins was only 5'2". My teacher's tall, he's big for Chinese. He's big and strong, and Hawkins could throw him around. He was like, "This is unbelievable. I've never seen this before." And then he learned from Hawkins and realized what Hawkins was doing. He showed him what he was doing with the structure, and Hawkins obviously was amazing. So that was really his big influence. But he also then was able to look at every style of Wing Chun and see what people did in their Wing Chun and why they did it. And a lot of people do stuff, they don't know why they do it, they just repeat it. So they do something in application, but they don't change their form, even though the application means that they're doing something different than their form. The form is a blueprint to what you do. So if you change your application, the form needs to adjust, right? So our style now is really, it's a Yip Man frame, and based upon the Yip Man frame, you have Siren Tao, Jump Kill Buji, Wooden Dummy, Knives and Pole. But the choreography of the form is really made up of my teacher's experience of how structure works and what techniques work within the structure in the best way to make it more fluid. So we have a very traditional style, but a very modern style, because we've modernized our style. It's like a Lamborghini version, but we still have 4 wheels, steering wheel, gears. It's still traditional. It's still a vehicle, right? But we're just a very high-end vehicle in my mind, because we have a lot of sophistication. We have sophistication in the movement, in the timing, in the connection of the forms, why the forms do what they do, how they connect together. People do the forms, do chi sao, and that's it. Or they do some weapons training on a dummy, but they don't connect them together. So we can show how the forms all connect into chi sao, how chi sao connects into guo sao to fighting, how the weapons influence your training, how the dummy improves your close range combat. So all these things for us are very obvious now because we see all the connections and it's very organic and very systemic. Everything has its place. It's like a jigsaw. No piece is not not in place. Everything works together. I look at a lot of other styles and I can see them doing some very good things, and I can see them doing things that they don't really understand. And I can see them doing things that I think maybe I'm not going to say wrong because it's the wrong way to say it because everything can work. Because you look at some of the older styles of Wing Chun and people say, oh, they're antiquated, they don't work. Well, actually, a lot of times they do work, but people don't understand how they work. So they misunderstood what they were trying to do. And they're trying to overlay what they did then into what we're doing now. And the environments are all changing. So everything can work, but you have to understand it. The most important thing is understanding the structure of it and understanding how it works. And if you understand how it works, you can make anything work. It doesn't mean you're making something work that shouldn't work. It means that you're understanding how that process ignites and how it develops. So for me, my teacher, it's a very traditional style, but a very modern style. He's always tweaking things and changing things. He's always calling me up. We talk each week on the phone and do video calls all the time. He'll tell me, try this. I've just changed this around or resequenced a sequence in a dummy because I thought this flows better. And then we try it. Yeah, you're right. That's better. So we always looking to try and perfect things and change things. We're not trying to just stay stagnant and just do the same thing all the time. Because if you do that, you're just passing on someone else's blueprint, but you don't really understand it. You can't read it. So like for example, my website, I have this online training platform. It started off basically because I moved to New Zealand and my guys were messaging me saying, I can't remember how to do the form, I can't remember how to do this, or what drill should we do? So I started video taping stuff for them. And then eventually I had a friend who was a web designer. I said, oh, we can do this easy. It's put it online for you and it makes it easy. So I really did it the first year I did it properly. Wasn't really going to release it to the public. It was just for my group of guys. And then it just grew from there. Now there's about 55 courses on there. And people say, oh my God, there's so much to learn. Some people get overwhelmed. And I say, well, it's not really. The first year's training is mostly 80% of the system. The other 9 years training I've got up there now, because I've got 10 years of training, it's just other ways to do things, other ways to learn things. There's obviously grappling on there. There's Qigong, there's exercise. There's lots of different things on there. But in terms of Kung Fu, a lot of times when I create a new course, I'm creating a course based upon a problem that we have right now and showing how that problem is solved with what we have. So it's just another way to do what we already do. So how we solve the clinch, how we solve sparring, how we solve MMA, how we solve kickboxing, how we solve takedowns, right? So you're using what you already have, but you're just teaching the solutions to what we worked out works within a size system. So you're giving people a shortcut because instead of saying, okay, well you go and work it out, you might never work it out because if you're trying to do takedown defenses, but you don't have a black belt in jiu-jitsu, you're going to think about all the wrong solutions because you don't understand what the attacks are. So because I have a black belt in jiu-jitsu, I understand what all the attacks are. So when I do defensive mechanisms of what I would do to defend it, it's based upon knowing what I would do to do it. Because what I would do to take you down is what I'm defending. So you need to have that knowledge. And having just a few zombie takedown attacks and someone is going to just bang you on the head, that's not going to work. It's not going to cut it. So you have to understand what the real attacks are and how people chain them together and have a high level of attack to be able to have a high level of defense. And that's where a lot of people grapple me. It doesn't make sense, but people fall into that category a lot where they have a limited understanding of the problem, so they get a limited solution. Right. So I try to have a very good understanding of the problem, which gives me a very good understanding of the solution.
That's interesting. And so for your own training and development, when you're training or teaching, do you very much hone in on one style, or do you allow the different styles to kind of integrate and piece together? Because obviously there's so much high level knowledge going on in your head from the different styles.
Yeah, I think I only have one style, which is basically Chusari Wing Chun. That's the only style I think about. I don't think about anything else. And what happens is if we go to the ground, I use jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Right? If we stand up, I use Wing Chun. So people say, "Oh, your Wing Chun is more MMA based." It's not. Everything we do stand up is Wing Chun. Our clinch is Wing Chun. Our striking is Wing Chun. Everything we do from a striking, hitting idea is Wing Chun. If we go on the ground, there's some principles in Wing Chun that have helped my grappling in terms of sensitivity, control, the understanding of body structure and balance. Obviously, definitely helped my jiu-jitsu a lot. Wrist fighting, hand fighting. Wing Chun helps massively. But you're still doing jiu-jitsu because you still need jiu-jitsu techniques. So if you're wrestling, you're still using wrestling techniques. But the Wing Chun, the way we learn it, is because it's all about body structure and how the body works. That's what a high level jiu-jitsu has, is good body awareness, which people call base, right? You know, how your base is, right? Where you have a good awareness of your timing, your connection. This is what we call body structure. And wrestling is the same. So things like wrestling, jiu-jitsu, Wing Chun, Eskrima, everything has its own distance and timing. Everything has its own perception of what technique will achieve the goal that art has. But generically, they're all the same. They all have to have good balance. They all have to have good position, good timing, good leverage. Everything's the same. And once you understand balance, you understand leverage, you understand timing, you understand how to conserve energy, right? You know how to breathe and relax and how to not use the muscles incorrectly. Then it's generically the same. So you become more of a martial art beast rather than a Wing Chun guy, a grappling guy, a Eskrima guy, a kickboxing guy. I just see myself as a martial artist. So for me, Wing Chun is what's given me that skill. But equally, you could be very, very good at jiu-jitsu and add striking skills. You could add takedown skills. You could be very good at wrestling, add submission skills, add striking skills. And that can be your base. So as long as you have one art that's really your solid foundation of how you think and how you breathe, that art can be a good base for learning other arts and to make other arts work better for you. I was just very lucky because jiu-jitsu for me was easier to learn because of Wing Chun. Otherwise, I started jiu-jitsu very late. I was in my mid-30s. Most people nowadays are black belts by 20. Eventually one GBS black belt came over to teach, and we're still way behind. That's why I was going to America, because going to America was where I was able to get jiu-jitsu training. But the Wing Chun definitely was the art that really glued it all together for me. And I wouldn't say that's all Wing Chun, because not all Wing Chun I think has that emphasis. They train a style and they have certain ways of doing things. That doesn't give you the vehicle to grow. I think the difference with the Chusali system, my teacher system, it's a vehicle that allows you to grow because it's all about how your body works. So it's a different way of training. The way he taught me was very interesting because the first training session we had, I had 10 years Wing Chun already, and I trained various styles already, and he explained to me how every different lineage used their Tan Sao, used their Fuk Sao. He just showed me like some do it high, some do it low, some do it here, and he explained to me mechanically the pros and cons of all the different positions. And then he said to me, which one would you do? And when I said, I'll do it here. Okay, how would you do Fuk Sao? I would do it here then, based upon what he told me. Where would you do Bong Sao? Okay, I will do it here. He goes, okay, that's how we do it. Okay. So he made me choose the sword, choose your sword, right? So I chose what I chose is what he teaches. I didn't know which one he was teaching because he was just telling me how it all works in terms of body structure. And I didn't know that he was making me understand it to a level where I could choose it myself. So in some ways, when your subconscious brain believes in something, it becomes so much stronger, because when you don't really truly believe in something, you lack conviction and you lack courage because you don't truly believe in something. But when you know something works and you believe it works and you know how it works, then you're more righteous in your belief. You have more intention, and that really helps you to be good at the system. That's why a lot of people fall down in terms of self-defense or sport, because they're just doing what they're told, but they don't really truly understand or truly believe in it's going to work. They hope it's going to work. Hope is no good. Hope is not going to help you. You need to understand it's going to work. That's why you need to be fully sure that you believe in it. So the only way you believe in it is if it's tried and tested and you understand it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That's the way that he'll teach you, that he kind of goes almost backwards from body mechanics, like here's how to prove and test it right way, rather than following like a rote script that a lot of people will do. This is the way we do it because my Sifu says we do it this way. Mechanically, is very
the first lesson we had, after 10 years training, I'd only learned Sifu Tao and a part of Jump Kill, because no one would teach you more than that, because it was very slow learning. And he showed me Silver Tail jump kill Bill G in the same day. And I already had a heart attack. I was like, what's going on? It's like, why am I learning so many things? And, no one's ever shown me this. He goes, well, it's because it's not important. It's just a sequence. He says, you learn that so you can practice it. He goes, how can you sharpen your sword when you've got no stone? You need the forms to practice, the pathway to practice the skill. So why wait 10 years to learn the forms? It doesn't make sense. That's like, you haven't started yet. It's like you haven't had enough stuff to get going. So, because I can remember back then, people would say to me, "Oh, you've been training for 10 years, you must be pretty good." And I'll be going, "Yeah, I'm all right." But in my mind, I was thinking, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? I'm still winging it. Do you know what I mean? But after 1 year with him, I felt like, I'm not too bad. I know what I'm doing. My confidence level just went through the roof, because until then, it was a bit like I wasn't too sure, But even after the first 2 days of him, we went through the 3 forms. He showed me all the structural methods. My Wing Chun just quantum leaped. And then the second trip, when I went back to see him again for 2 more weeks on the second trip, he said, "What do you want to do this time? You want to do the diving?" I was like, no, let's just do the same thing again. It's been 2 weeks going through all the basics, because I'd only firstly got the grasp of it, and I want to make sure now that I understood it. So, so I did that for about the first 2 years. Every time I went to see him, just do the same thing again and again, because that to me was the key. The key was to get them basic skills and get depth of the skill, not just more knowledge. I mean, and later, he laughs now, because he said to me, "Oh, you're clever," because he taught loads of people over the years, and people just want more and more stuff, right? He said you wanted less stuff, and that gave you more skill. So I've always had that mentality that it's not about how much you know; it's about what you do know. Do you actually know it? Can you do it? So nowadays you get students, you teach them something, and they say, "Well, what's next?" Or "What do I do now?" And I say, "Just train what I just showed you for the next 2 days." I mean, what do you mean, what's next? I mean, you can't even do what I just showed you. It's like, but people always thinking ahead too much, So, it's really just having that sharp sword. My second teacher in Wing Chun was Jack Contu, a very good teacher, very skilled guy. And he always say to us, things like, better to have one sharp sword, one sharp knife than 10 blunt ones. That was one of his sayings. It always stuck in my mind, because he was very much about basics, and have high level skill. And to this day, we're friends, and when I see him, I still look at his skill and I think, wow, there's not many people that have that kind of skill that he has. He's still got it, that skill. It's just got deeper and deeper. And it's not like he doesn't have a very elaborate system, right? He has a very structured system. It's not fancy, but it works because you train it properly. You train it hard. You train it hard. You train it with discipline, and you get the skill. I mean, I was teaching a seminar once in London, and he came along as a guest, and it was really a big honor for me to have him along. I could see it I looked over at one point when we were watching the students train, and I was looking at people, and I could see the guys that kind of understood how to train, and you could see the people that were just like, okay, we've been doing this now for 10 minutes. What's next? You can see it in their eyes that they're getting bored now. And then I was thinking, okay, I'll teach something else now. And every 10 minutes, you show something else at a seminar. But I remember looking at him, and he looked at me, and we just had that look like, these guys just don't give, but they're not even understanding it, because they haven't really tried to do it. They haven't really tried to actually do it. They're just sort of a show and tell. Show me what's next. Show me what's next. But when I looked at him, I just saw that look in his eye, because it just reminded me of the old days where we just did things for hours. Hours and hours. That was the key.
Yeah, that's it. And I remember you actually talking about this in Thailand as well, just that depth of like that repetition, like you just got to keep doing it and trusting the process and really focusing on what you're doing rather than just going through the motions.
Yeah, it's like, if you put a piece of paper on the ground and tomorrow you put another one on the ground, next day you put another one on the ground, eventually after a few months it's a stack, right? But if you put one on the ground and come back 2 days later and it's blown away, and you put another one down, come back 2 days later, it's blown away. After a few months, you've still got nothing, right? People don't understand it. It's the layering of the skill that takes time, and in some ways, it's the hare and tortoise game. Because if you do it for that 6 months diligently, it doesn't take time. It's quite quick.
Right.
But if you do it haphazardly over 2 years, it's still nothing.
I like that. That's a good analogy. I might pinch that in the future. but yeah, it is super interesting. And I like the kind of modern progressive approach that you guys have to Wing Chun in particular, but martial arts as a whole. And I remember, again, we were talking about it before, you were talking about you always want to be at the tip of the spear rather than the handle, and the development of the art. And I really like that as well. That really stuck with me.
Yeah, I mean, that's one reason why we started training more jiu-jitsu, because as jiu-jitsu started to become bigger and more accessible, it was one of the big things. Then I started to look for a good jiu-jitsu teacher, and I heard about this guy called Leo Nagao who come over from Brazil, and he was a world champion. Victor Belfont, all these guys were his friends, and he had taught all these guys when they were young. You know, like he was like the senior. You know, he trained with Marcelo Garcia because he was he trained with Alliance with Fabio Gurgel. Fabio Gurgel's, even his name, the General, came from Leo. You know, Leo called him the General. You know, because Leo's a big character as well. You know, so I think Fabio was to come training. Leo said to students, "Get ready, the General's here." I mean, you know, like he's that kind of fun type of character. He's always very fun to train with. But you know, he's people. I think don't really see. They think because he's a very physical guy, they think it's about power. But he's a very strong guy. There's no doubt. He's super strong. You know, strong as an ox. But he's very gentle. Like he doesn't try to use his strength. He just has perfect positioning. And when you have perfect positioning and you're strong, it's like trying to move a car. It doesn't. You can't move it because the position is correct. So it's not about strength, because you can have brute strength and just be very strong, but you burn yourself out. You get tired when you use brute strength because your muscles will use a lot of oxygen and you burn yourself out. So when people talk about high level skills, you know, people that can train a long time, it's not often that they're fitter than you, it's that they don't use as much energy, right? So we talk about chi or energy, it's about conserving your energy. So under pressure, you don't burn yourself out. And if you're using brute strength, you'll burn yourself out. And I can remember the first time I trained with Leo, my student Aaron had been training for about 3 months before me, because I was busy with my clinic, and I sent Aaron down there. I said to Aaron, go and train with this guy and see what he's like, because I didn't want to waste time. So I said to Aaron, you go and see what he's like, because I was trying to find a good teacher, but I was trying to be conservative. My time was busy at work. So Aaron said to me that this guy's awesome. He's really good. I said, okay, we'll train with him, and when I get freed up, I'll free some time slots, then I'll try and get a regular time slot with him. And it took about 3 months because I was so busy. And then I came down to train. And at the time, Leo was training in Carlson Gracie's boiler room, which is the old famous boiler room. Simon Hayes used to train down there and stuff. It's a very famous place. And so we came out. It's basically a boiler room. It's like a jiu-jitsu room downstairs in the basement. And I came down, and Leo had been training Aaron for about 3 months. And I think he'd been working with Aaron on takedowns and basic stuff to make him, we had a few years of grappling already, because Aaron had won fights by then. He was an MMA fighter at that point, so he wasn't bad. But obviously Leo was a much higher level, and Leo didn't really know much about me, other than what Aaron sort of said. I was his teacher, and he knew I was a striker more than a grappler. But I had some grappling skills, but because I'd done the catch wrestling before that, and trained at Shark Tank, so I had grappling skills. But I wouldn't say I was of a high level. I was just of an intermediate level, really. So we came down, and Leo said, okay, because Leo was really into jiu-jitsu, must be functional for the street and for sport fighting and for MMA. It wasn't just for jiu-jitsu fighting. So everything he did had a focus on, had to work for everything. And because he knew we were trained for MMA, I was trained on fighters, that was the focus. So he came down, know that I can hit Aaron at will, because he's good, but obviously I'm his teacher, and I was a better level than him, so he knew that would be tough. And he knew that I could grapple. I wasn't like a beginner. So Aaron was like, oh no, this is gonna be bad. But Leo probably thought Aaron could do it, because he'd been learning all his grappling skills, and he could do it. So Aaron starts trying to grapple me, and I'm smashing him. And at one point, he looked a bit sort of dazed, like he was starting to go out. So I was trying to just be a bit careful of him. So I started to take him down, because I thought I'd just put him down. So I put him down a few times, and Leo was like, oh, this is pretty good. And then at one point, we were training, and Aaron just ran at me because he was in trouble, and we smashed into the wall. One of the walls we didn't know was a plasterboard wall, and we went straight through it. And all this plasterboard comes down on top of us, and Leo just grabs us and just throws us back on in the middle and says, carry on. So now we're like white ghosts of all this past, and we're still fighting. And then I put Aaron down again because Aaron he was facing the wrong way at one point. I hit him so hard, he was facing the wrong way, and I thought he doesn't even know where I am. Do you know what I mean? So I thought I just take him down. So I put him down, and then Aaron's on his back, and Leo's going, "Use your guard, boy! Come on, use your guard." And Aaron's just lying there like a crab. You know, I said to him, "Use your guard, man. What's wrong with you?" And then he started to recycle guard and try to put his guard. And Leo's like, "Wow, thank God!" After 3 months, you know. And I realized what happened is because he says guard, and Aaron's like a East Ender. You know, his English is real London, East End London, and
Yeah.
he wasn't. I mean, I was reasonably well travelled. So even though, you know, I wouldn't say that I'm a linguistic type of person, but I knew what Leo was saying. Guard was guard, right? I knew that. So just his accent. And Aaron, obviously, for 3 months hadn't been doing it properly because he didn't know what he was saying. But he didn't actually ask him, "What do you mean?" You know. So Leo was like celebrating because Aaron had pulled guard and then pulled me into his guard, and I passed his guard and smashed him. And Leo was like, "What the hell has happened?" Do you know what I mean? And then he sort of realized that my level was a bit higher than he thought. And then we had a spar, and on the striking, Leo was pretty shocked with what I could do. And at one point, he took me down. He was on top, and I thought, okay, this guy, I can't escape. You know, he's got such a good crossbody. So I thought I'd give him an armbar. No, he got mount in the end. He had crossbody and he got mount. I thought I'd give him the armbar, and then I'll pull my arm out and reverse it because I got to try and bait him because his position was too perfect. So I gave him the armbar, and then he went for the armbar, and I pulled my arm out, and then I remember just sort of like spinning, and then he was back on top of me again. So he swept me while I tried to escape. You know, so his level of skill was like so many layers ahead of me. It was like I couldn't even work out what happened. You know, he was just so far ahead. It was so smooth. There was no transitional bump or there was no pulling or anything. I just pulled my arm out, came to get on top of him, and I was back on my back. It was just so smooth. And I remember thinking, he's so powerful and so smooth, but it was so light. It was just like I was in his world. I was stuck in his world. I couldn't get out. And that's when I just thought, okay, this is it. I'm home now. This is definitely who I want to train with because, you know, it was just so far ahead and the layers were so amazing. And we just got on so well. And to this day, obviously, we're super, super good friends. He's been my teacher for a long time now and always will be, you know. So, yeah, Leo's another level. And then it's funny because a lot of people in London come and train with him and don't tell their teachers because, you know, he's a bit of a Ronin. He's not really connected to any big group, you know, like even though he's from Alliance as such and he's trained with Leo Varela's Checkmate, he trains everybody, but he doesn't really subscribe to being part of anybody's affiliation. So he can go everywhere and do anything, but everybody comes to him and gets extra lessons and secret training because, you know, he's just such a good person to train with because he's so knowledgeable, such a rich history of skill, and such a good way to train. You know, you never come away from training with him without knowing something completely new.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That is fun. I have heard a lot of good things about training with Leo. To be fair, I do like that story. I remember you talked about that before. But yeah, I've heard he's a super high level guy. He's actually relatively near me. I always mean to check him out at some point. But
go and see him. Go and see him. Yeah. don't take your time. Go and see him. He's amazing.
Fair enough. All right. After this, but. The other thing I wanted to ask you about a little bit was Eskrima, because that's slightly different to a lot of the other. A lot of it's very hands-on, whereas Eskrima is obviously primarily weapons-based, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, Eskrima does have empty hand parts to it, but most of it is kind of semi-made up. You know, not saying that's wrong because that's how, as I believe, martial arts should be made up. You should progress it and you should try to find ways to make the art grow, right? But a lot of systems maybe don't always add the right things in, or maybe add things in that you don't need. You know, so there's a kind of like a bit of a mismatch, right? So I was lucky because I started off with Pat O'Malley and Drew Tucker back in the day, and at Rapid Harness, and I trained there for quite a reasonable time and got to brown belt. I wasn't far from getting my black belt, I suppose. Got really well drilled, and Pat was really. It was at a time where he was still competing, and he was still, well, as it probably is now. He was still, you know, super high level skill, and he was going to the Philippines a lot, coming back with a lot of new stuff and trying new things out. It was a very rich time to be around it because they were still progressing their system. They had a system, but they were still progressing it even more at the time. And they did a lot of live fighting, so a lot of it was full contact. You know, like I can remember one day, I think I was kind of like, this is how I got my brown belt. It's funny. I didn't think I was grading because I just turned up to help because I came up to be one of the numbers for one of the guys to beat up, like just fight people who were doing their grading, because one of the guys was doing his black belt and a couple of guys were doing brown belts and stuff and all that sort of stuff. So I just came to help because it was a weekend. Training was normal. We used to do like a 2 or 3 hour training session, and then they do the grading because they want you to be really tired before you do the grading, because part of the idea was, make you only have your skill left, right? You had nothing left physically. So they'd always do like a 3 hour training session. So in the 3 hour training session, I was absolutely knackered. And I thought, well, thank God I'm not grading, because I'd be knackered. I'd be thrown up. And then I was watching the grading start. And then Jude comes up behind me and puts his helmet on me and pushes me in and says, okay, yeah, you go, let's go, let's go. And I was like, what do you mean? You're in. Do you know what I mean? So I was in to fight. And I had no clue what was supposed to be happening. And I didn't realize it was a full contact fight, double stick fight. Someone handed me sticks and I got the sticks. Okay, let's go. So it's like double stick fight and headbutts, elbows, knees, kicks, takedowns. But because I had quite a reasonable level of striking skill, I was able to smash the guy I had and disarm him, smash him. And then next one, because it was full contact, it actually suited me better, because where I was reasonably good with a stick by then, I also was higher level empty hands, and I was a high level grappler than all the guys there because I'd done a lot more grappling. So yeah, I did really well. And at the end of it, when everybody was getting their certificates, I got my brown belt. I was like, oh, how come? And they said, well, you beat everybody. So, it's like you did well. I didn't beat everybody. I mean, I just beat the people I needed to beat.
Yeah.
Got my ass kicked as well. Everybody, no one won that day. We all come out smashed. But that was the whole point. There was no ego. You win a fight, you lose a fight. If you win a fight too much, they're basically, make it harder till you got beaten up. The idea was that you were going to take a hiding. And then the black belts did like no armor at all. They all come out with the welts everywhere and stuff. And it was pretty good times. For the time, it was really cutting edge. And you just felt you're part of something special. So I really enjoyed my time with Rapid Honest. And then I trained with one of the black belts there who'd gone to the Philippines and learnt the Eskrima system, and he started showing me some of that, and I really liked that system because it was all about footwork and timing, and the footwork put you in the right place. And I could see, it's like when I first learned Wing Chun. When I first learned Wing Chun, I could see it could work, but I couldn't really work it out. And I met Robert Chu, and it worked out. It was like, okay, now I understand it. And I could see with this guy I was training with, the system really worked, right? But he'd only trained like about half the system by then. So it wasn't like he had everything, but what he had was very, very good. And I think nowadays he's a very high level, so it's good. But he had Mark Wiley come over a seminar. Mark Wiley was a very good friend of my teacher's. And my teacher told me, when Mark comes over, look after him, take him out, So Mark came over, and I ended up sort of being the person that he demonstrated with. And by the end of the seminar, I kind of realized I'd learned like a lot more just being his partner at the seminar, because he had the whole system. And also he had more than the whole system, because Mark's trained with like maybe, I'm not even exaggerating, 60 different masters in the Philippines, and actually trained about 10 or 15 systems, completely. And he was a private student of Angel Cabalas. He trained with a lot of the whole system. So that was his main focus. And he had trained with Eskrima, trained with Tony Diego. He had trained with all the guys, and he had put together a system of what everybody had taught him and systemized it so he understood it. Because obviously in the Philippines, people just train, they're very skilled, but maybe not always the best in terms of distilling the knowledge into a understandable, easy way to understand it. Mark, first thing he did was hand me a manual of 100 pages that he'd mapped out the whole system. It was easy, right? So we became very, very good friends. I started training Mark, and we've been friends ever since. And I learned the system from him. Integrated Eskrima, which is his system, is basically, it's kind of 90% the Eskrima system, very systemized. So he totally understands it. And then all the different things that he's learned from other styles, like from Lightning Harness and different styles, he's taken some of the best parts that he liked from them and added them in. Like some of the styles had very good double sticks. Some of the styles had very good understanding of disarm. So there's different styles that he liked, that he put some extra stuff into it. But fundamentally, the system is very Khalid Eskrima based, really. And Eskrima was a master. I mean, he was a real Tuleng. He had cataracts. And I remember Mark said that he trained him the first time, and Mark thought he was pretty good. And when he sparred with him, he couldn't touch him. And he goes, "This old guy with cataracts just wiped the floor of him." And he said to him, "I just hit the shadows." He's like, "What do you mean?" And I think now I can see what he meant. He knew from what had happened, where they touched, where he was and where he was going. So he was able to predict your past, present, future.
Sure.
Which is
Okay.
what we do in our Wing Chun. We understand if we control the present and control balance, then the person only has a choice of getting back to balance or trying to get out of that position into another position. So you're already ahead of them. And he did that with his Eskrima. So that really set well with me because it was really fitted into the generic understanding of what we do in Wing Chun. So that's what I'm saying before at the beginning. Like, if the styles are right, there's a generic balance of how everything works. It starts to make sense. So yeah, that was really important to me. So yeah, so Mark had also trained Wing Chun with my teacher as well because his Wing Chun was something he really liked. So he understood why I trained. Yeah, we just became very good friends ever since.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I didn't realize he had that Wing Chun background as well. And one other thing that I've heard you talk about at seminars, it's a bit unrelated, but you've used one of your keywords, smashing, quite a bit. I know you like that. You talk about your cortex quite a lot. And I think that's a really important concept that you talk about at a lot of these seminars. Would you mind just kind of briefly skimming over what you mean with that?
Well, in terms of fight and flight and that sort of stuff, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I learned this. I mean, I've studied NLP and I studied psychology. Obviously, I'm Chinese medicine. In Chinese medicine, we talk about the spirit, the emotions quite a lot. So for me, and I suppose when I was young, I was bullied and abused as such growing up. So for me, I was always in my mind. I was always like a scared child. I mean, in the back of my mind, my subconscious brain. So even though I was learning martial arts and getting stronger and getting tougher, I never felt like I was strong or tough. I always felt internally a little bit scared. I mean, so when such situations would arise, people think, oh, you've been training, you should be good. But I was probably even more scared because there was more pressure. But, so for me, learning a martial art that rectified that was super important. A martial art that changed my brain pattern, that made me more of not the aggressor, but more of the hunter than the hunted, right? Yeah, not be the victim, right? So yeah. It's a hard mentality to change. I mean, so through training in the NLP and psychology, and some of my friends who are psychologists, I learned a lot from. I started to understand more about how the brain worked in terms of that connection of learning, and also the way my teacher teaches, and the way in general in Kung Fu is taught in a certain way. And I can remember one of my friends, Kieran, who's a psychologist and psychotherapist, saying to me, "Oh, you've done a lot of NLP study." And I was like, "What do you mean?" Because that's before I did it. I was like, "What's NLP?" And he explained to me what NLP was. I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he said, "We use it a lot." And he started to explain to me how NLP works. And I realized that the traditional values of martial arts and how we teach and how we focus and how we motivate people, there's a pattern to it, right? There's a pattern to it. And in NLP, what NLP did really is look at how language patterns work and looked at how hypnosis worked and how trance state worked, and really put them all together. So it taken a lot of kind of basically.
Sorry.
It taken a lot. Sorry.
NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, isn't it?
Yeah, neuro-linguistic programming. Yeah. So neuro meaning the brain, linguistic in terms of language patterns, and programming, how to program them patterns, right? How language affects us. So there was a lot of language in martial arts that I didn't realize. Just the way you say it, the way you teach it, has an impact on how you use it, right? So I started to see all that and see the patterns. And then my teacher, Robert Chu, because he's obviously very high level in Chinese medicine, he's world renowned. I started studying Chinese medicine with him as well, even though I'd already qualified in the UK. He became my Chinese medicine mentor, which he is to this day, and we still study weekly together. So I was able to bounce a lot of things off him all the time, because we talk a lot. And in martial arts, you learn just as much talking and listening to someone as you do physically training. Physical training is super important. You need to do it. But if you don't discuss it or delve into it, you don't really get the right understanding of it, right? So this was over a long period of time. I started to understand how the forms worked, and I started to realize that the forms teach you at different levels, right? They teach you consciously to do something, and when you do it long enough, it becomes subconscious. It becomes a skill that you just have, right? So you have these levels of learning, right? Which most people have heard of in psychology. So you have your starting level where you have unconscious incompetence, where you just don't know what you're doing, and you don't know you don't know that you don't know what you're doing, right? So you're not aware of anything, right? And then you become consciously incompetent. You sort of know that you're rubbish, right? You know that you don't know it. And then you could become consciously competent, where you know what you're doing and you know how you're doing it, right? And then eventually you become unconsciously competent, which means you just can do it without thinking, right? So there's these 4 levels. So I started to ponder that a little bit. And I started to see the connection, the forms of how conscious level of training and unconscious level of training became very important to have both these levels. And I realized that once you got these levels connected, that's when you got the high level. But the high level came from having the two working together. When you can consciously do something and really understand it, but your subconscious also is on board with it and understands it and trusts it. And that's when you get this high level. And even Einstein said that with the left and right hemisphere of the brain, you have this creative side and analytical side. He wasn't the best academic student to start with, but he had a very creative mind. But once one caught up with the other and they both worked together, that was when you hit a higher level of consciousness, right? So for me, in the martial arts, the first thing that happens when you're in a situation of pressure is, the fight or flight wants to kick in, right? So before I was stuck in flight, because I didn't have confidence. So I think confidence is very much connected to your ego level, right? So when your ego is insecure, you become very sensitive, right? You become more worried, right? When your ego is relaxed, your insecurity is less, right? You don't feel so insecure, right? So that's why you need layers of skill, because you need layers of skill so your subconscious brain trusts in what you do. And when your subconscious brain trusts in what you do, you don't go into that fight or flight, because you don't want to go into fight or flight, because if you go into flight, you just freeze, right? And you don't do anything. And then that's all bad, right? If you're going to fight, you might fight and go like a maniac and fight, but it's unskilled and you don't have control of it, right? It's better than flight. Some people are more prone to just go straight into fight. I was more prone to go into flight. And then as I got more skilled, I got more confident. You start to get more resilience and stay in your cortex. You stay in your thinking brain, and in the thinking brain, if you stay in your cerebral cortex, you still have your fine motor skills. You still have your decision making. I suppose a good way to look at it is if you look at, say, like a basketball player. When they take that shot from the half line and they can hit it under pressure, that's when you're in your cortex, right? If you throw the ball and you can't hit it under pressure, that means you're going to fight or flight, right? You're starting to go out of your cortex, right? The pressure has hit you. So the best players in the world, they spend like hours in practice throwing that shot, and some of them can't do it under pressure, and some of them can do it under pressure no problem, because they've got used to that pressure. They've found that connection. So that's why doing something repetitively is one way to get there. It does help you get there, because you're hardwiring them pathways that you can do that movement. Martial arts is so much more complicated because it's multiple movements under multiple pressures, right? So it's a very high level of pressure to be in, right? But if you look at MMA and you look at very high level jiu-jitsu guys or very high level grapplers or very high level strikers, when they're in trouble, they actually get more dangerous, because when they're in trouble, that's all they've got left, right? So you've got a jiu-jitsu guy in trouble, that's when they're dangerous to submit you. If you've got a wrestler in trouble, you're going to get taken down and mauled. If you've got a striker in trouble, you might get knocked out, because then they're just in the flow state and they're just basically trusting their skill. So that's a very high level. So you see other guys that have an all-round level, but they don't have that depth in one level that they can completely trust in. So I always think having a high level in one thing first, or even you can train multiple things at once, but get good at one thing really, really helps, because that one thing will help you stay in your cortex, because your subconscious brain will trust it. Once it trusts it, then it will work for you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's super interesting. I really agree with that ability to kind of stay calm and calculated under pressure and use what you. Yeah.
I always say to my students, if I'm in trouble or get hurt, I'm more dangerous. Because I rely on skill more and more. So the more pressure, the more skill. That's the way it should be. Yeah. If you crack under pressure or you get panicked under pressure, it's not a bad thing. It's just where you are. It's just the level you're at. So like most people in jiu-jitsu will find that there's so many times people have tapped out from cross body when they first started. As you get better and better, then you'd rather cut your arm off than tap out from pressure, because you're better off just passing out. The moment you say to yourself, if I pass out and die, it's okay, then that's that saying, today's a good day to die. The moment you sacrifice that idea that that's not really the problem, then it doesn't become a problem. So in NLP, they say the problem is the solution, right? The moment you let go, it's not a problem anymore.
Okay, I like that. hardcore. And so that's kind of
I had to be like that because I got killed so much. Everybody smashed me, so you have to let it go and say it's not the big deal, right? A lot of people, they put themselves on a pedestal, and ego holds them back, right? So ego is important in terms of a positive ego. Otherwise, you don't turn to training, right? You want to get good, you train hard, you dedicate, you're respectful. There's all positive things about ego, but the negative ego is when you're upset if you don't learn quick enough, or if you don't win. If them things upset you, that's a negative ego, right? You just have to be in the moment. My best students are like the young guys that I teach, that they don't care if they get tapped or tap people out. They just want to just try cool shit. You know what I mean? They want to just try new stuff and see if it works. And it doesn't work, doesn't matter. Just happy-go-lucky. And they're the guys that are most successful. And they're the guys that catch you the most, because they're willing to just try things and don't really care of the consequence, right? Because it's not real. It's just, I was saying to my guys, this is not real. This is just training. Try stuff out, do stuff. And then we'll have nights where we say, okay, this is a smash night where, if you get it wrong, you're going to get smashed. So, you got to fight tonight. But most of the time, we're rolling and we're just trying to try things out and have fun, And then if you're doing chi sao, like you see me do chi sao, people, I don't hurt people. You don't have to get hurt. No one gets smashed up. We give each other a bit of pressure, and you get hard to the body, because you have to be able to take a punch. But to the head, we're controlled, because with empty hands, the face, you're going to get hurt. So we control it. But we can train at a high level and a high tempo and still maintain that control. Because some people say, oh, I can't control it because it's too dangerous. The art's too dangerous. Well, if that was the case, every time you do jiu-jitsu, someone would get their arm broken every lesson, right? Because they say, oh, I couldn't control it because I just smashed their arm. I mean, it's like, no, you can control it. It just means that when you control it, there's more chance of a person getting out, but that's fine. There's no problem. You still did the technique correctly. If you did it a little bit less so you didn't hurt them, they got out, and then you turn into a sweep and then get them to something else, and you've learned two things, right? So people often focus on just one result, but actually there's many things to get out of training, and there's many ways to get it out of training. So we focus more on having a good time and trying things and really experimenting what you have. And then we obviously, if we train for a fight or we're going to have a grading night, it's balls to wall time, and this is time to show what you got, right?
Turn it up a bit. Okay, and so Sifu, we were just talking about the learning process and kind of how you see that working out between the teacher and the student. Would you talk a little bit more about
that? This is probably quite useful for a lot of people that teach, and also for students. So it's an interesting thing to talk about. Over the years, I mean, I've been teaching for over 20 years, and a lot of students come and go. Obviously, a lot of students stay. You have a lot of changes in the relationship between a student and a teacher over that time. But I think that the thing is, a lot of people confuse the learning process and don't understand how to get the best out of learning. And a lot of teachers don't understand maybe how to get the best out of their students. So for me, I learned a lot from my teachers in terms of how to teach and how to get the best out of people. But then also I learned a lot out of other areas. So learning NLP and psychology, I learned a lot of things about how we work when we're learning stuff, and that really helped a lot. Kieran Deal, one of my students, who's a psychologist, I think I talked about it before, he taught me a lot about archetypes, and I read a lot of Carl Jung's work. And I think it was Steve Gilligan that Kieran trained with, and he put it into 4 archetypes, and I thought the archetypes really, really helped me with my teaching. So maybe I'll talk about that quickly. So in terms of archetypes, you have archetypal figures, right? So you have like a king. So if you're a teacher, you're the king. You're in charge. You tell people what to do. That's how it rolls, right? So that's the king archetype. But if you're the king all the time, people get fed up being told what to do, and it's just one-dimensional. It becomes a dictatorship. So people resist that. So you can't be the king all the time. That's why you need to have a balance of different archetypes, right? So the king is one, right? And then you have the warrior. The warrior leads by example, right? So you inspire your students because you can do the skills. You can show them you've got the skill. So that inspires them, right? For guys that teach and fight, obviously their warrior archetype is very high. But the problem with that is that if you're the warrior, you can become a bit selfish because you just want to fight and do your own thing and use people to get better, right? So warrior energy can sometimes be overwhelming. And also for students that have a low warrior energy, that can be intimidating, right? So You need the king, you need the warrior, but you need the balance between them. And then you have the magician. The magician is the idea of creating some sort of wonder or excitement about something. So you have skills that maybe are hard to understand, first of all, hard to do, but they make you excited about learning, right? So that's when you're teaching people and show them high level skills that maybe they're not ready for, but you're giving them a glimpse of what they're going to learn. And when they see you do things, they can see that you're doing things so easily. They can't really work out how you can do it, right? It's not that you're hiding the skill, it's just that you're inspiring them to show them that there's more layers of skill than just using brute force, right?
Yeah.
So the magician is very important. But obviously, if you never show them how to do it and you don't show them a pathway to do it, then that can be deceptive, right? It can be smoke and mirrors, right? So, the magician has its place, but obviously, again, within the balance. And then the fourth one is what they call, traditionally in psychology, they call it lover energy, but it's more like the compassionate energy. Compassionate because sometimes people need a bit of help, right? Sometimes they need to be taught in a way that makes them feel that they're in a good environment that makes them feel they can learn in the environment, and they need to have that. You need to have that compassion for their learning, right? So the negative side of that is if you're always just like that, the person never gets tough. They never toughen up. They never take responsibility. They just think everything is easy, right? So if you only have one of the archetypes, it doesn't really work, right? If you're the king all the time, people will revolt. It's a dictatorship. If you're the warrior all the time, your attrition rate will be very high, right? If you're the magician, people will get fed up because they're not learning anything. And if you're just the compassionate love energy, it's all hippie, right? People just think, oh, this is all cool, but no one's getting skills and no one's developing any robustness, right? So the way to use the archetypes is use them all the time together, but you just have to use the right one at the right time. So, for example, I had a student that had never had any fight experience and needed a lot of help to build their confidence. So I used a lot of compassion, right? Really helped them, and a lot of magician to show them the energy of how you could train, what you can develop. And then show by example. Now and again, I'll just show that I can do it so they could see some inspiration. And I didn't give them too much king energy, right? Too much ruler, because they needed to be sort of nurtured. And it got to a point where they got quite good. And then someone came in and wanted to spar, and I said, go and spar with them. And when I was sparring with them, I could see that he was kind of getting under pressure and getting a bit stressed. And he went in the change room. I went in the change room and he was all upset and he was in tears. I said, what's wrong with you? He goes, oh, I'm just a bit overwhelmed. I said to him, look, I've been training you for like all this time. You've got all the skills. You can do it. Just get out there and bloody do it. Otherwise, I'll slap you. And all of a sudden he was like, what? You're usually really nice to me. And I said, get out there and do it. You know what I mean? So he went out there and he did it. And after he said to me, I did it. I said, I know you could do it. And he was all a bit like confused. I said, well, sometimes you need to kick up the arse, right? Sometimes you need to be pushed, right? Sure. Sometimes you need to be helped, right? So that's just an example of all the different energies being used at different times, and at the right time has the right result, right? So sometimes you need to just tell people to shut up and do it. Sometimes you need to support them. Sometimes you need to inspire them. Sometimes you need to lead by example. And sometimes you need to kind of mix them all up depending on what people need, right? If you just do one, which is a lot of people do it my way and that's it. Or people just very good, but you don't feel like you can ever get that good. People get very disorientated where they're at. So I think the archetypes is a really good way to think about how you teach, because it allows you to realize some of the things you do, why you do them. Like I'm generally quite strict in my class, and that's the warrior king energy, like, because I want the class to be safe and do as they're told, because that way people don't make mistakes. And then when people are suffering too much, then you turn on a bit more compassion and more magician and get them inspired and make them feel comfortable. And once they get comfortable, then you push them again, right? And then you do some hard training, and it's all warriors, right? You're all going to train hard. And at the end of the training, they feel like they've gone through this roller coaster of emotions, roller coaster of different things, but they can't really put their pinpoint what happened, but they feel like they were inspired. They did well, right? So, that way you can really take everybody at the different levels, and they all have the kind of same, not the same experience, but the same quality of experience.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense. And that actually goes a really long way, I think, to inform, obviously, not just the teaching style, but the whole culture of like a different gym or a different club. Like you say, you can see it when you visit other schools, that a lot of people will be one of those archetypes, and they'll only that element of, a really warrior focused academy or whatever. turns off kind of the average Joe, or you have people that are just really highly skillful, but not necessarily the putting a lot of practical applications behind it and things like that. So
exactly. Yeah. So power is knowledge, right? So when you start to see through the curtain and start to see why things work the way they work, you then have an empowerment. You can then use that, right? So you can then be in a situation where you can say, okay, I need to tap into my warrior energy. I need to tap into my compassion. You need to, you can realize that it's not just about you as a person and how your ego is affected. It's about you integrating into your environment, right? So it makes a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I really like that. I remember reading that in your book as well, and I quite liked it. I don't think I took it on board as much as they when you broke it down like that.
Yeah, because it's not just black or white thing, right? It's a very fluid, dynamic situation of how you deal with things, right? So yeah, I just thought that would be helpful as teachers to understand that when you teach, you have to present yourself in different energies, right? You can't always be the tough guy. You can't always be, strict. You can't always be easygoing. You can't always be kind of secretive about what you're teaching, right? You have to all these things mixed up, right? You have to be using these things as tools to help people grow.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that. I mean, I don't teach yet, but it makes a lot of sense, and I can see that.
Well, they're just as important as a student, and this is what I was going to talk about as well. As a student, you have to learn how to learn, right? And if you don't know how to learn, then you can be really stuck, right? So often over the years, people will tell you different stories about me. People will say, Alan's really nice, Alan's not very nice, Alan's really strict, Alan's really helpful. People will say all sorts of things, but it depends on what they had at the time. If they were being kind of weak at the time and I need to push them and I'm pushing them hard, then some people will see that later as like, okay, you pushed me through it. Some people read that as, oh, he's just being mean to me, right? But then later on in life, they come back to you and say, I realize now you weren't being mean to me, you were pushing me. And I didn't realize it. Right now I realize it because they've had other experiences in life and they've realized that what was going on. So it's hard because when you're teaching, often like I joke about it and say I don't like teaching, I don't like students, they get my nerves. I do it on purpose because what I'm trying to do is, and I love teaching, otherwise I wouldn't do it so much. I love teaching, but the reason I say I don't like it is I want people to feel like they're not important because they're not important. I'm not important. None of us are important. We're just doing something and we're just trying to achieve something, but it's not that important. And the reason I sort of do it that way is because if you put it on a pedestal and you try to think yourself as self-important or a student's development is important, it's only important to them at that point in time. So sometimes you might have 2 months where you don't really improve a lot, but all of a sudden you improve. So what actually happened over that 2-month period, you were improving, but the increments were trying to come together. And once they click together, you get the improvement. But if you wanted the improvement every lesson, you're never going to get it. So you could go through 2 months of feeling a bit sorry for yourself because you're not improving, and then you won't improve because you haven't really put yourself in a point of commitment to the training. So all the analogies of being in the moment, being present, they're all true. They're all true. You have to be in the moment and be present, and just take each moment as it is. When you start focusing on results, you're not really on the journey. You're thinking about the end of the journey, right? But you have to be in the journey. So these things help the students as much as teachers, I think, because learning how to learn is a key skill. I can remember when I was with Aaron on our first trip to America to see my teacher. This is 20 years ago. I said to him, what did you take away from the trip? What's the biggest things you learned? He said, well, we learned a lot of good stuff. It was amazing. And my teacher is amazing. So we had a really good time. He said, but for him personally, one of the things he learned the most was watching me. I said, I wasn't doing anything. He said, no, I was watching you learn. He said, you basically, you sort of hang on every word that your teacher says and you listen and then you practice and then you come back next morning, you've improved. And then after a few days, you ask a few questions about what you're doing just to confirm it, make sure you got it right. He said, but I realized what you're doing because when everybody was finished training and hanging around and feeling sorry for himself and feeling tired, I'll go back to my room and practice for 2 hours. Wow. So he realized that I was doing a lot of work, but not saying much and wasn't making a big thing about it. And also, I always ask for less, not more. When my teacher teaches me, all my teachers will tell you this. Every one of my teachers, the amount of times when they teach me something, they say, "Oh, what do you want to do now?" I said, "We just want to do it again." I said, do you want to do something different? No, just do it again. And I always laugh and say it's because I'm stupid, I'm a slow learner, which is partly true. But the other part of it is I'm quite aware that until you get that level in your DNA, until you really feel you've got that level that you're trying to get, there's no point trying to get the next level, right? You need to get what you got. Once you feel like you're happy with it, then there's a natural progression. The progression will come. You don't have to think about it. It's a bit like MMA fighters that they want to be champions. They want to get to UFC. They want to do this. They want to do that, and they try and make all these different things they can do to get there. Well, you just need to win your fights.
Yeah.
If you win your fights, you'll get there. So a lot of the top guys, when they asked them, why did it take you a long time to get here? It's like, I wasn't in a rush. I knew I'd get here because I win my fights. I mean, you just got to do your job. So as a student, your job is to learn. Your job is to listen. Your job is to take in what you're learning and don't confuse it. Don't overcomplicate it. Just do it exactly as you're learning it. It doesn't mean have no brain and have no input and have no say. But people nowadays have too much input and too much say because they think they know too much. So what happens is when you learn something, people often say it back to you with the way they interpret it. I don't do that because when they interpret it a different way, it becomes something different. All my teachers always said to me, what they tell me is important to learn what they've told me. So when they tell me something, I do it and I learn it the way they told me. Later, you can add your own flavor to it. But at the time you're learning it, my advice is to do it exactly as you're told because that's what the skill is, right? A lot of times I tell people something. I remember with Mark Wiley once, he was teaching a seminar and he was saying to people, it's all about position and timing, right? It's the most important thing. And this guy put his hand up and says, okay, so you mean it's about the angle and the speed? He's like, no, I didn't say that. It's like, I didn't say that. No, it's about position and timing. He goes, okay, so the faster I do it, the better. No, it's like, just do what I told you. So that's what I was saying about before, when sometimes when I was with my other teachers or with other senior students and we watch people learning, and I look around, I think, the people are practicing, but they're not really learning because they're not really listening to what you're saying. So listening is a really important skill. And then once you've listened enough and practiced enough, then yes, you've earned a place to ask questions. And I always say to people, ask any questions you want. It's fine. I don't hide anything. But I also try to get people to understand that ask the question at the relevant time and try to think about what your question is in terms of like, how is it relating to what we're doing, right? If it's something different, we can talk about it later. But right now, ask about what we're doing. If you need to confirm what we're doing, that's fine. But often you teach someone, like in Jiu-Jitsu, I had loads of students where you teach them an armbar or a kimura or something, and they say, what happens if the guy does this? What happens if the guy does that? I'm like, I don't know. I said, what do you mean? I said, because you haven't done that yet. So I have no idea because I can't see what you've done because you haven't done the technique yet. So if you've done the technique that I showed you, there'd be nothing to do because he will tap. If you're doing it and you're doing it wrong, then you can make adjustments. But at the moment, just do the technique,
Yeah, right.
And then some people get upset because they feel like you're giving them a hard time. But that's, again, it's people's egos, right? There's lots of egos in people in terms of learning. Unfortunately, martial arts does attract people who are insecure. I was one of them. We all come to martial arts to try to get more secure and to build our resources. But unfortunately, some people, they don't really want to challenge themselves. I've always tried to push myself out of my comfort zone. And people say, oh, Alan's quite close-minded. I hear this sometimes from people because he thinks he knows it all. Well, no, but if you're a beginner tell me what to do, then I'm not going to be listening to you. If you're my teacher or my senior student or my training partner, of course I'm going to listen to you because you're my peer, right? You're going to have something to discuss, right? Or if I meet someone from another style, I listen to everybody. That's why I've trained maybe 4 or 5 styles to a high level and maybe trained in another 10 styles because I'm always trying to learn things. But people don't see that. They just see you as someone who has an answer for things. But the answer I have is based upon stuff that I've done, stuff that I know. So yeah, I do have some answers, but it doesn't mean you're not open-minded. It doesn't mean, you're not ready to learn. You're always ready to learn. But people, it's a reflection, we say, like a mirror of their own insecurity. They don't like to be told something, right? They don't like to be told they're not very good. I had a student who was upset with me because I told him he was a beginner because he had 10 years training already. I said, well, you're only a beginner, so don't worry. He's like, I'm not a beginner. I've got 10 years training. I said, yeah, but you did 10 years training. It wasn't very good. So you can't apply what you did. So you're still a beginner, unfortunately. It's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It's just what it is, right? It's just what it is. So people have a tendency to take things personal. You know, they think it's some attack on their personality or who they are. But it's nothing to do with that. That's why I say we try to have the idea that we're not important, because we don't need to be important.
Yeah, I like that. It's a lot less ego driven, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, ego is good in terms of motivation, drives you, makes you want to do things. But the wrong type of ego is very bad, right? So, you know, if you hang around and train with people with negative egos, then, you know, in terms of like they're negative people, then it's gonna have impact on you, because you become like the people around you, right? So I always try and attract myself with like-minded people, people that I like training with, people that have the same mentality, same sense of humor. That really helps a lot. You know, I have students sometimes ring me up and say, "Why should I come and train with you?" I say, "I don't know." They said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I'm not trying to sell you anything. You either come and train or you don't. And if I like you, I'll train you. If I don't, I won't. If you don't like me, don't come. I'm not trying to convince you of anything." You know, but people nowadays, they sort of think that you have to make them want to come, you know. And from my point of view, I always say to my students, and I just sort of joke with them, but I say to them, "I hope you don't all turn up. I want to come to class and just train by myself." You know, when you turn up, it's annoying. I have to teach you. And they will laugh, but what I'm saying to them is I like it that they turn up, because I don't make it easy for them, because I want them to feel like going training is taxing, it's hard.
Yeah.
Not like it's hard because you're not going to learn anything. It's hard because we train hard, and because we focus, and we're working hard, and it's disciplined. And I like that mentality, because for me, you want to feel slightly uncomfortable. You don't want
Yeah.
to feel comfortable all the time, because when someone attacks you on the street, or someone's going to try to hurt you, you're not comfortable. You're uncomfortable. You have to get used to being uncomfortable and not let it fear you, not let it affect you, right? So you have to be relaxed under pressure. So if you're used to being inside a pressure environment, then that pressure environment makes you disciplined, right? So, you know, if people walk on the mat with shoes, I give them 20 push-ups, right? If they go to the toilet without telling me, they can go to the toilet if they want, but they need to tell me, so I know that if they don't come back, I can go and check and see if they've fallen over and banged their head. So they get 20 push-ups, right? So I've got one guy, Phil, who's one of my close friends as well. I give him push-ups for no reason, because he used to get so many push-ups in the first place when he first started. I just still give him. So when I walk in, I just say, "Oh, Phil, you're here tonight. Okay, do your 20 push-ups." He's like, "What do I do now?" "I don't know. You'll do something later." So it becomes a bit of a joke, because you know, it's kind of like building an environment where we're just always focused, right? We're always focused, but we're always relaxed. And if you're getting beasted and you're getting pushed hard, it doesn't matter. You know, it's just another thing. You know, it's just, you know. So if the guy says to me their legs are sore from doing squats, okay, say, okay, more squats then. We'll go around again. You know, anybody moans, I sometimes say to my class, I say, "Anybody tired?" And no one says anything, because sometimes the beginners say, "I'm a bit tired." I say, "Okay, we need to get you fitter then. Just go a bit harder." You know, so the guys all just stay quiet. But it's not because I'm trying to catch people out, or try to abuse them. I'm trying to make them feel like nothing matters. You know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're tired. No one cares if you're tired. You know, if someone takes you on the street, they don't ask you, "How you feeling today? How's your day been? Are you tired?" You know, it's okay if I just rob you. You know, no one cares. You know what I mean, so in training, you want to have that idea. No one cares about you. You need to just do your thing.
Just crack on and do it. Yeah.
Just get on with it. Yeah. Because if I have a bad day, I go training. A good day, go training. I'm tired, go training. I've got energy, you go training. And then that means if you have a day where you're tired, you just do what you can do, right? It doesn't mean it's bad training. It just means that you don't have much energy to do much more than you're doing, right? And if you have a day when you're full of energy, then you get excited and you try to smash everybody, have fun. That's great. And then days that you're tired, everybody tries to smash you. You have to defend that. That's great. You know, everything's good. You have to be like a dog mentality, where dogs are always happy to see you. You know, because that mentality, you know, they just live in the moment, right? The dogs have already mastered it. Do you know what I mean? They've already mastered the art of living, right? They're just happy. You know, they just get on with things. So that's very important. I think that's a very important trait that we have to try to develop inside our training. And you know, that's again, martial arts is not for everybody, because martial arts is difficult. So some people say to me, "I don't feel motivated." I said, "Don't come then." They said, "Well, what should I do?" I said, "Give up." They said, "But I don't want to give up." I said, "Well, come then."
Yeah.
"No, we told me to give up." I said, "No." I said, "If you don't want to come, don't come. If you want to come, come." They're like, "Oh, but I want to come." I said, "Okay, well, come then." And they said, "But I don't feel motivated." And I said, "Well, don't come then." And they go around in circles. And I was like, "Just go home then." I mean, because if you don't feel motivated to train, you're never going to get any good, because martial arts is not easy. You know, it's hard. And if you want to get good, you have to put effort in. So if you're struggling on a decision to actually even go in the first place, then you're going to have a tough time. You're never going to get good. The only guys that get good are the guys that keep turning up and they're hungry, they work hard, they're excited, they're happy-go-lucky. They're the guys that get good. The guys that drag their feet never really get good, right? So it's not for you, right? And then when I say it to people, often, the positive side of the ego kicks in when they go, okay, I'll show you, and they turn up and they start training. So, okay, good. We'll see what we get. So, I'm not a big believer in motivation. I think it just explains something after the fact. I did it because I was motivated. You did it because you want to do it, right? If you don't want to do it, you wouldn't do it. So I think that's pretty simple.
Yeah. There's got to be that underlying level of motivation, and that you actually do it.
Too much effort, otherwise, right? It's too much effort to do something you don't like doing, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. Yeah, and then the other part of that is training partners, right? A good training partner, I think, can really help with your enthusiasm, right? Because you have good training partners, you can bounce off each other, and that helps, right? So I'm very lucky. One of my main training partners, one of my best friends, is Vic, who you met, right? You met Vic in Thailand.
Yeah.
And, Vic Ho-Chi. I mean, he to me, he's like an encyclopedia of kung fu, of martial arts in general. He's super skilled. We've got the same sense of humor. We like the same things. We train the same way. So I mean, I train with him all the time, every week, and every time I train with him, I learn something new every time. So every time, because of his mentality, the way he thinks about things, the way he delves into things. Every time I do train with him, every time I learn something new. Right. So it's funny because people often say, like they say, "Oh, you think you know it or something." It's nothing like that. It's just that they don't talk to you. You don't talk to these people. I don't know these people. So people online will say something, but it's irrelevant, right? But the people you're with, the people you train with, that's the only people that matter, right? So if Vic says something to me, I listen because he's very highly skilled. I know that he's got good skills in so many martial arts. We train a lot of the same martial arts as well. So we both train grappling, we both train Wing Chun, we both train Eskrima, we both train Tai Chi. So we do a lot of stuff that we both do. And he even does more stuff than me and more martial arts than I do. So, he's like an encyclopedia of knowledge for me to delve into and to chat to and to train with. That's for me is important because it's good to have someone that you respect that can make you curious about stuff, right? And also to cross check and double check and make sure you're on the right path on things, right? So training partners can be very positive if they're the right level, and students of a high level. I've got some very high level students that some of them have surpassed me, like Peter Irwin, who you met on our camp. He's one of my students, but he's got skills in areas that I don't have.
Yeah.
His jiu-jitsu is better than my jiu-jitsu. His fights, you all had things you can bring to the table to help each other with, right? So just because someone has more skills in one area doesn't mean you can't learn from something from them from another area. So everybody can learn from each other. That's why we did that Thailand camp. We had Vic, we had Pete, we had Eddie. I got my A team of guys together because I thought it'd be a good experience for everybody to see all these different characters teaching and what they did. And Aaron was there, and Aaron's a really good kind of like command master chief. He's a good guy to just get everybody working. So it was a really good experience to have everybody there. Different styles of teaching, learning things different ways, and also to see how we all interact because all of us were going to each other's training and just training as a normal student. Right?
I was about to say
every morning Vic was training. I just let's do it. I just come and do my training. Eddie's teaching. Yep, turn up, do my training. So we're all students.
Yeah, and it does show really good, like, again, go back to what you were talking about with like the leadership role, like leading by example there, going to other training sessions and learning from other guys, even when you guys are all there at your own respective levels, teaching as the experts in whatever that subject was for that class. You're still going to each other's classes and learning, and you can see there's a really good like camaraderie and rapport between you all, and you're listening when it's the other person teaching rather than trying to input your own way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we don't do them training camps to make money. They just cover the cost of being there for everybody. We do them to get together, to hang out and train, and get the students to meet our friends. Because it's for us, it's a family group. Everybody we've been all trained together for years and years, and I think on the camp, Eddie had a big talk to everybody about, when I first came to train with him 20 years ago, and when Pete came over, and how that all worked and where we are now. It was really nice. It was just nice for everybody to sort of see that long-term connection and what you get out of that. There's many layers that you get out of that. And for us, we just wanted other people to experience that, because it's done so much for us, right? We've all had these experiences, and it is a roller coaster. Sometimes you have good days and bad days, and this is what I was saying. Nothing's ever good all the time. Sometimes things are very tough, and sometimes you feel like you're stuck, and sometimes you feel like you can't get things right. It's fine. It's just normal. You just dust yourself up and get up and do it again, and then it will get there in the end. I mean, the one thing I would say is spend some time looking for the right teachers, because you can waste a lot of time with the wrong teachers. Even sometimes you might train somewhere because it's helpful at the time. Later, you might realize that it wasn't as helpful as you thought. But that's life. Always look for the positives out of it. But I think if you're going to spend a lot of time with people, you want to make sure you've got good teachers. So do some research, and just don't just dive in without thinking about it, right? So try some stuff out, get a little bit of general knowledge about martial arts, so you understand what you're looking for. Because it's different, all of them. I'm not good at all of them. I'm okay at some of them and better at others. I just like doing it. I just like training. So I like learning things. So same with Chinese medicine, training acupuncture, training Twin Arm, which is the body work, training herbology. You never stop learning. I'm still studying, doing more stuff, even though I'm fully qualified. You still learn. And unlucky, because my Wing Chun teacher, Robert Shu, he's a very famous herbalist and acupuncturist. So he's my mentor. So I spend a lot of time every week learning stuff from him. And that's been going on for the last 20 years. So you never stop learning. Learning is an ongoing process. But you have to have the interest, right? If you haven't got the interest, then you won't have the motivation, right? And the motivation won't come if you're not interested. So yeah, find the stuff that you're interested in, and then the motivation is going to be there anyway.
Yeah, you'll have that passion. Well, that's awesome. That's so interesting. There's a lot of good stuff to glean from that conversation, so I appreciate that. For people interested in learning from you, obviously you're based in New Zealand. I won't lie, I don't have a huge New Zealand following for you, but people online, you've got your online academy.
Yeah. So you can find me online, Alan Orr, WingChunAcademy.com, or just type in Alan Orr, it will come up. I've got about 50 courses online that you can learn all things Wing Chun. Even we do other styles. We've got courses on body structure that will really help whatever style of Wing Chun you do. We got courses on boxing, Chinese boxing, glove work, pad work. A lot of stuff is, I think what makes it different is it fight experience. So even if you're not fighting, you should train with fight experience. So a lot of courses I've done, I have a lot of guys from other styles that do my courses, because it gives them a level of experience that they didn't get, because in their school they never did that kind of training. But we did it. We've done it. We still do it. So you're able to get that experience, which I think is really valuable. I just released a new course on bare knuckle boxing. One of my guys, Ben, did a bare knuckle boxing fight just before New Year, and we trained for that, and we filmed a lot of the training for it. So we put out a course on it, all the stuff that we focused on and stuff that we did, because it's not necessarily completely new to my guys, because we train on that anyway. And I've done courses on the way we do Chinese boxing, which is obviously our Wing Chun applied in kickboxing. But because the focus was bare knuckle, it really suited the Gorsao and Wing Chun concept of really striking with bare knuckle in mind rather than gloves in mind. So there was quite a few. There was a lot of things, details that came out that a lot of stuff that I do, I don't know. I just do them because that's what you do. And my body's working it out because I have the system in me. But every time I teach something for a few hours and record it, it always ends up with 20 new things that my guys have never seen before. And I'm like, well, we do this all the time. So you do it all the time, but we don't realize you do this. You don't realize you do it. And it's fun. It's fun for me because it's kind of like it becomes a diary of my training, and sometimes highlights some things that I didn't realize I was doing a lot of, and now I can do it better because I know I work out 5 more things that can work with that. So so the website has grown, over 10 years. It's funny because when I started it, most people thought you can't learn online, and then obviously when COVID hit, everybody went online training and teaching, and I've been doing it for 5 years already. So now it's become a big thing. But a lot of the stuff that on Wing Chun that's online is just people just showing their forms and showing some drills. It's not really a lot of depth in my mind. And there's a few people doing stuff out there now based upon more of the application of Wing Chun, kickboxing style Wing Chun, but it's not really the system itself being applied. It's just applying Wing Chun in a different environment. Ours is much more than that because we've applied our Wing Chun in that environment and we understand that environment because we've got 25 years experience. So I'm pleased with it. I think it's a good adjunction to your training. I'm not saying online training replaces your training, it doesn't. But I've got students that train me in other countries for 4 or 5 years online, and then they come to my seminars, and the skill level was very good, And then when it comes to seminars, then I grade them then, and yeah, they've got skills, got very good skills. It's not like you meet up and all of a sudden think, oh, they know what they're doing, but they can't do it. Then they've been practicing with their friends, they built a little group, and yeah, it does work. So that did surprise me. I thought more of it of a way to add more layers, but the layers work, because the style works. Like if you watch jiu-jitsu and you learn a new jiu-jitsu technique, just because you learn it online doesn't mean it doesn't work. It works, right? Because it's been tried and tested. And I think tried and tested is the key. If it's tried and tested and it's systemic as part of a system, because jiu-jitsu is a system, it has a flow. If you're training jiu-jitsu anyway, you understand that the engine of jiu-jitsu, then it works. And our Wing Chun, as you said, it's alive. It's a system that has a tempo and it has its own vibration. So it has its own feel, its own engine. So, when you add things to it, they just work straight away. It's not something that you just learn and can't do. You can do it.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a fantastic system. I think there's a lot to be gained from it. All the little clips from you recording at seminars and things as well is fantastic, just in and of itself. So yeah, I think it's an excellent system.
I appreciate it. Yeah, that's nice to hear from you because obviously we met at my seminar. You came to the seminar and we met there, and that's how we met. So yeah, it's nice to get that feedback, and you can see even from the seminars you've been to, like in the UK and Thailand already, you can see the tempo of how the guys work and what we've got out of it so far. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, well, I've learned a lot from it, and I really appreciate your time, both in the seminars and the camps, and here today as well. So,
you're very welcome. Yeah,
I'll end the recording.
Good. Right. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you once again for listening. I really hope you enjoyed that. It was a super interesting conversation with Sifu Alan. He has loads and loads of insights on so many different topics. That could have easily run on another few hours, I feel. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you took something from it. Please do go and support Sifu Alan. He's got various different training options, as we discussed. Primarily his online platform is where he does most of his work now. But check him out. Again, all the links are in the description for whatever platform you're listening on, and you'll find that all there. Also, please do not forget to support the podcast. Please help us grow. Share this with other martial artists. Please do rate the show on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, and follow us on Instagram to keep you updated with all of the new ones that come out. In the meantime, sit back, enjoy, and I will see you on the next one.